of it, I was just kind of fumbling around, you know what I mean? Didn't really know what I was doing. I spent the better part of my career, 10, 15 years at a dealership, and I got bored. And I decided to move on to the independent side of the industry. So I got questions. Anybody in here have main dealer experience as well as independent shop experience? Would you guys, would I be on a line of saying, at the dealership level, we kind of get tunnel vision? Like there's one way of doing things? To talk about a lab scope or anything like that's a little bit weird. That's been my experience as well. So when I was at the dealership, I became very, very, very confident and comfortable in my case, the Hondas I was working on. I knew them inside and out, forwards and backwards. And in my mind, I thought I was a really good technician. I was a great team member. I did my job well. I had a good rapport with the customers and the working staff at the dealership. But I thought that made me an excellent technician. When I left the dealership and went to the independent side of the industry, I kind of took the Honda badge off the hood, or the bonnet, whatever you guys call it, right? I took it off the front of the car, and you put on a Volvo or a Nissan or a Ford, emblem, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. So at that point in my career, I realized it was a sad day for me, kind of. It was actually a good day, but it felt sad at the time because I was dragging myself in the dirt because I didn't know what I was doing. But I made a decision to learn how things work. And I don't know if you gentlemen ever met or heard of Jim Morton. You guys know him? He's a dear friend of mine. I describe him more as an uncle, like family. He took me under his wing. I met him at an ignition seminar he was putting on one night. And he agreed to help train me if I maintained the effort, if I kept pushing forward and trying harder all the time. So the most important lesson I've ever learned from this man, and I'll never forget it, is 85% of the crap that happens on cars happens because it has to, because the physics involved. And you can't change that. What am I talking about? When we create a spark, that's physics, right? There's laws and principles that go into that, and no matter who the manufacturer is, that spark has to happen. So if I became familiar with how an ignition system created a spark, I could master that, and it applies to everything, right? How each manufacturer discharges that spark is the 15%, not the 85%. So if I know where to find the 15%, I'm good. Einstein said it best, never memorize anything you could look up. He probably said that a little bit differently. I'm paraphrasing here, but you get my point. So my new mission in life, in my career, was to understand how everything worked in general, and realize that not every car manufacturer did everything the same, and I was to research, familiarize myself with my opponent, the one I'm working on. So because of that, I tried to master not only tools that apply to every car, like a lab scope and a DVOM, and a propane enrichment tool, but also testing techniques that go along with it. So that's where this came about. I realized, like, holy cow, an internal combustion engine. I became familiar with seeing people do this sort of testing, and I got kind of obsessed with it. Does that make sense? I became a little nuts over it. I'd stare at the computer screen for hours, trying to understand how the squiggly lines came on the screen. And after practice and practice and practice, trying to understand what happened, it hit me. A light bulb went off. And suddenly, I could see things that other people weren't seeing. So the power of pressure waveform analysis applies to all the internal combustion engines we deal with. I don't care if you're working on a Peugeot, or a Renault, or a Ford, or a Mercedes-Benz, or a BMW. We might play games with the valve timing a different way, right? Valvetronics, VBT, variable valve lift and duration, that's the 15%. The internal combustion engine as a whole, that's the 85%. So that's what this class is about. It's about keeping things easy. This is not hard to do. Ryan, where'd he go? Where's Ryan? Is this hard to do? It takes practice, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's easy. Piece of cake.
It is easy. Once you guys realize this is so simple, it's not even funny. So this is your class. This isn't my class. There's 500 slides in this class. We could easily drag this out to be half a week or more. I want this class to be your class. So far, we've done this class twice this week, and not one of them was the same. I want this class to be the same way. Ask questions. There are no stupid questions, please. If I say something that doesn't make sense, I promise you at some point it's not going to make sense. But don't keep quiet. Tell me. Because if you're thinking it, he's thinking. Somebody's got to speak up, okay? Is that fair? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Awesome. So the name of this class, Pressure Waveform Acquisition and Analysis from the Inside Out. I call it that because it's important to understand that pressure and vacuum is generated within the cylinder. When valves open and close is where these pressure or vacuum ranges are introduced to the tailpipe, to the intake manifold. If there's a compromised head gasket or a cooling system sealing surface, it can make its way into the cooling system. With a crankcase, if we have a low end issue, we can see these pressure pulses, correlate them to an ignition event, and as long as we know the firing order, we'll be able to identify what the fault is without taking anything apart. So, oops. There we go. So what I'd like to cover today, obviously, first and foremost, is what is a pressure transducer?